Not letting me do that either.
She's just trying to do the live stream.
I worked on the door so it doesn't slam on you, and then I also worked on, there's a, I call them the liquor store ding dong. I turned it into the front door, so any sound impediments or funkiness.
Are you gonna do a welcome to intro kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I'll go ahead and, let's see, I'll go ahead and open it and then right as announcements, I'll go to Heather. To welcome.
Okay,
Okay, so if you go to YouTube page, we'll have our live on there.
okay.
Okay, you can introduce us, but we are live on YouTube.
Oh, you too.
So we were able to live to Facebook. Live to-
YouTube. Okay.
Yes.
I was just going to Facebook too.
So we should do cross link.
Warcry,
Yeah,
2 words.
that's correct.
Okay, I'm gonna open it so I can turn to you. and then we'll jump in. Welcome to the Yakama Nation Museum. We're glad you guys were able to make it out today. We are honored to have as our guests and our main speakers, the women of the War Cry podcast. I'm gonna introduce them. We'll start right here with Emily Washings, Robin Pucci, and Nicole Pucci. Emily?
Yes. Thank you, Heather. So we're here today to kind of talk broadly about the missing and murdered Indigenous women and people crisis and to share insight and updates on MMIWP as Yakama co-hosts and with our live audience. And sharing, including any anecdotes about experience. We also realize this is such a triggering topic that we often, for those of you that haven't been a part of this or seen this before, we often like to have it like if we were at a diner or at like Melly's or something talking about this topic and you were at the table. Us, what would you hear? And because it can be so triggering. As Heather said, we are live today from the Yakama Nation Museum with a live audience, as well as our online audience at YouTube. We are all native run podcasts discussing data, events, stories, issues, and historical connections about more Northwest missing and murdered natives. We are located on the Yakama Reservation, and we are live streaming at the 12 o'clock hour. Again, my name is Emily Washings, and my co-hosts today are Robin Pibishi and Nicole Pibishi. And Patricia Whitefoot is not able to join us today, but I'm sure she'll give additional insights as the days go on. And, and I'm going to turn it over to Heather just to explain a little bit about what this lecture series is and what you can come to expect in the future. Oh, we're beatboxing. That's what it sounds like.
Okay, welcome to the Yakama Nation Museum. This summer, we're gonna have a series every first Friday of the month. We'll have a speaker or a podcast from the Yakama Nation, whether it's a program or a group like this today, to present what they're doing and how well they're doing and give you a chance to hear the happenings of what's going on, and then to ask any possible questions. I believe the ladies are welcome to questions, but they can choose if they're going to wait to the end or during it. This will go on so every month except for June. So June 7th, which is the first Friday of June, you're all invited to the Treaty Days. I don't know how I'm doing that. And that is a huge event we have for the Yakama Nation. We start off with a flag raising ceremony in the morning, a parade And then at the south end of the campus, the Yakima Nation Cultural Center campus, we have vendors of all sorts, information booths, food booths, craft booths, art booths, all kinds of things going on. And then after the parade, there's a salmon bake out back that we do as well. And that kind of kicks off the whole weekend because Yakima Nation, the greater Yakima Nation, does things as well. There's a powwow at the Pavilion in White Swan, as well as the rodeo has rodeo grounds and many more things. So check out our Facebook pages and flyers and information for more on that. I would now like to turn it over to these wonderful ladies.
Oh, do you also want to say something about the exhibit?
Oh, yes. So Yakima Nation Museum has an exhibit. We worked with Yakima Nation Behavioral Health to put up an exhibit to bring more attention and awareness to the missing and murdered Indigenous people. Yakima Nation themselves has, Yakima Nation, the government has a department now that is there to help and to assist in any way they can with those things. But if you come to the museum, it's in the North Wing and it's a movement that started in Canada, is moved to the US called Red Gallia. It's a kind of plan words. So it's the Red Gallia exhibit. Thank you.
Is this the mic? Is it the-
It is.
Okay. How do we make it? I feel like the issue is right at the bottom.
Probably an old cord.
Oh, okay. So do you want me to hold this like this then?
If you'd like to, if you don't want to use it, that's fine. It's up to you.
Okay, okay.
Probably just set it on the table.
I just pretend I'm a beatboxer if I accidentally move it. Yeah, it's this part right here.
Okay.
Hold on.
You tear it off.
I feel like we're a Jurassic Park or something. The Velociraptor is coming.
Yeah.
For us. Yeah,
Just
I'll
project.
try to project louder.
Just turn it off then.
Yeah. Okay. So we also have a couple of upcoming events in the area. As Heather had mentioned, the Yakima Nation does try to do a lot of awareness, especially in the month of May when nationally there are awareness events going on. So on Tuesday, May 7th is the Yakima Nation Symposium on MMIWP. And then they also have the march that will happen on Sunday, May 5th. And you can look at Yakima Nation info for the specific details about route and registration. We also have an opportunity for people that want to be guests on the show to talk about their family member that might be missing or murdered. And, you can reach out to us through either our Gmail at warcrypodcast@gmail.com, or we have the Google form.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to turn it to Robin so she can say a little bit about that Google form.
Okay, so we know that it's not always easy. We've worked with the community, we have our protocols. We want to be able to approach families and say, hey, do you have a story that you want to share with us? And sometimes, when people are in grief and things are in the air, even doing that is a lot on a family. So we opened up a Google sheet. So if you were to visit the War Cry podcast website, there's under our resources link, there's a request. So it's like when you're ready, or if you know families who are ready to come and talk about their story or share about their loved one, because we love hearing about our loved ones who we don't want people to forget about their story. We don't want people to, and we want to hear it from the family as well. We don't want to create this story about who they were when really it's the family who knew them best. And so if you go to, again, the warcrypodcast.com, and then you go under our resources tab, of course, we have tons of resources. So anytime that we hear of a resource that's posted on there, we also have our own little bank of files that we try to keep. So if we see somewhere, we'll try to put it in there as well. Presentations, and then of course the request form. So you go in there and you fill it out. And when you fill it out, we get an alert. It's like, okay, well, if you're willing to talk to us, and it's on any level that you're comfortable with. So it's like, I just would like a statement read on one of the shows about my loved one, or I would just like their name to be read. a small blurb, or I want to do a full-on interview. So it's really what level people are comfortable with, because, you know, being a part of the community, and even when we see walks, families are at different levels. So some of them are right up front and they want to have the picture of their loved one there and they're saying, don't forget. And then other ones are kind of still observing, or they're just kind of like, that's just, I'm not comfortable with that yet. I'm still just in this grieving process and trying to figure out what's going on. So we want to be able to support families in every, whatever step it is that they are. If they feel like they need to get the word out, that's where we want to help them.
So there's multiple ways. You can do a Google form. You can just send us a message. We've had family members that do want to just talk to us, and then they decide that they want to hold and wait before they actually go forward with recording a show.
Right.
So we have people at different parts of the process that we're going to always take the family or loved ones decision. Like, we'll keep checking in and seeing like, hey, are you ready? Or do you want to just kind of keep talking and checking on this? Or is there bits and pieces of information that you have that you want us to research and look into more? So there's kind of a range and different dynamics that we've seen. Okay. Do you want to go to bookshelf, or do you want me to go to the prosecutor?
I could talk a little bit more about the resource.
Oh, okay.
So I was looking at the Washington State Patrol missing Indigenous person or missing Native Americans. And so the reason I feel, if we backtrack and talk about why these stories need to get out, every county, because I was putting together by county, because Washington State Patrol used to do that on the map, but they didn't, as Emily pointed out yesterday, they're like, they don't have it on the map anymore. They'd show counties. Every other county has maybe 5, 3, 8. Yakima County, so that's anywhere on the reservation in Yakima, 33 MMIWs, 33 MMIPs. And so obviously we have probably per capita the highest rate of missing Native peoples. And as you're going through, you can see the ages, you can see how long they've been missing, you can see how old they were when their birthday was. The oldest one would be 165, I think, or something like that, because that's how long they've been in the system. And the youngest is like 13, you know, that kind of thing. So with such a high rate, we're hoping that families do want to come and speak, because otherwise it's just that number. It's just that, oh, that person's been missing and they would have been 165 today, or you would have been 165. So it's very important, I feel, that we're able to get that story, so it's not just those numbers that the Washington State Patrol has. So that was something that struck me yesterday. Anyway, looking through those, looking through that, and of course we have the link to that on our resource page. So if you actually want to see that document, it'll show you around the state what each police department or agency is dealing with it. Okay.
Yeah, so again, that's on our workpridepodcast.com. And I want to turn to Nicole and just get your insight. I know that you follow a lot of different true crime in podcast form, all the different media. Like, what does these kind of numbers and having this kind of information compiled, what does that bring up for you?
I feel like how Robin was talking about the Washington State Patrol numbers, they're just numbers that are reported. These are numbers that we know about. These are people that that the state has been informed that they are Native American, you know, that they are confirmed missing. But there are still some that, you know, we see missing flyers up for them, but we don't see them on the list. We don't see them listed as Native American even, you know. And I believe that if you're willing to come and talk about your family member, or you know, raise the issue that they are missing, or if they've been missing a month, 2 months, you know, not very long, or you feel like it's not long enough. The point is that they are missing, and that's where it starts. And to report and to, you know, voice that they are more than just a number.
If I could add on to that, so if you listen to any of the podcasts that are non-native run, so you have what? Crime Junkies, My Favorite Murder, there's a few other ones, and they're usually by non-native people, and I will say, like, even I like to listen to them and they do get compelling. But if they do talk about a missing native person, it's usually like one episode.
Yeah, it's
For the
one.
year.
And then they're very hesitant as to, it's usually one that's solved. It's never
Right.
one that is still ongoing.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they tend to really mix up and not understand the complex jurisdictions and like
The layers.
the circumstances that surround like why this seemed to take a long time.
Yeah.
And it really sometimes when you listen to it, at least how I feel, is their interpretation, because they don't understand, really always paints tribal politics or tribal people as if they don't know what they're doing, or
Yeah.
it just makes, I don't know, what do you think?
I feel as if sometimes they, like, they stand on is that we lack resource. Oh, they lack resource. Like, well, you're standing there saying that to us, things we already know.
Right.
What can you do to help us? They're podcasts that, or even like film or 2020 Dateline, you never see a native on the national news or national coverage as to, like, I love watching 48 Hours or like Dateline, 60 Minutes. You never see native coverage. Even like Cole Brings Plenty. Like I never saw him on 60 Minutes yet or anything like that. And it's very vague. They like to kind of, not raise the issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I get more information from tribal members and their communities about those cases than I would like a large national podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another, those are good points, Robin and Nicole, and thank you for sharing your insights. I also know that some of the people that listen are students. We get a lot of student requests about additional information where they want to change the system or they want to do better, they want to find more specific sites. And so we also want to make sure that we kind of have a place to reference them. And if it's something that we can link into our website, then we're willing to do that. If you have additional resources that you think would be helpful for us, we can send those in. I do know for the Washington State Patrol, one of the tribal liaisons, I believe, is transitioning out. So they might have some technical delays or limits on the map. I don't know if the map will be back. So having a map that shows geographically where missing and murder or missing people are in Washington State really helps identify and point to like where we should be focusing resources and issues.
And it shows common areas and patterns.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like when we think about, if we're thinking about Yakima people being missing and how they're categorized, we look at perhaps the agency that's dealing with them and what county they're in. So it's like the Yakima Nation, but we also have to remember that as a Yakima Nation, we extend beyond further than just Yakima County. So we would actually want to include like Klickitat County and then maybe any other neighboring, maybe even like Benton, those areas, because we have a lot of Yakimas who live in that area as well. So it's like, we need to be able to see, it's like, yeah, more than likely they're Yakima, and then we can actually look in and research them a bit and say, oh, maybe they're just a different tribal person, but living near our lands. And even when we're talking about our county, we would have non-Yakimas possibly missing in our county.
Yeah.
But because we, as the Yakima Nation, and of course they would never get this in a non-native podcast, because like we would also have jurisdiction over them as the Yakima Nation because they are enrolled, if they are enrolled.
Yeah. And yeah, that's another thing too, is them knowing if they are in fact Native American or I have identified or enrolled.
Right.
Yeah, that's the hard thing too, is sometimes it's not reported that they are Native American or federally recognized or even Canadian.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's very difficult to say that the numbers that they have are accurate, but the fact that we're in double digits is astonishing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
So again, we have that, well, I'm working on my own map because she brought it up. I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna make one. So, I'll be posting that as well. In addition to it, just on our resource page, just so that we ourselves can take a look at it. And of course, they do update that document, what is it, monthly or quarter? I don't know. I'll have to look into it.
Monthly.
Monthly, so we'd have to redo it, because the last update was on the 24th of April, probably towards the end of May, those numbers may change.
So they, part of the constraints that the Washington State Patrol has with updating it more often than monthly, because for having a missing person, having an update like waiting a month seems like a delay. Is that the NCIS, which is, what is the acronym? National
National-
Crime Information
Yes,
Statistics.
Statistics. Somebody correct me if that's, we get into acronym land and sometimes I just lean on those acronyms, so. NCIS, this national place that basically keeps all of the different information from different police jurisdictions and shares it out. They don't want them to ask them more than a month. So Washington State Patrol could very well do additional updates and that listing if they had further clearance. So having, you know, additional administrative things is still a reality with regards to MMIWP. And even in this list that we were talking about, you will see for missing Yakima tribal members, either enrolled or descent or other tribal members within the reservation, you will see Yakima County has reported numbers. The city, Yakima City has reported numbers. Yakima Nation has numbers, Klickitat County, and then
Toppenish.
and Toppenish Police. So so in order to like have a multi-jurisdictional thing, in our mind, it's like, just give us the information, especially, well, maybe you're not running all the numbers for everybody, but where there's concentrations where it's the highest area, maybe we need more coordination and you should just kind of speed it along.
Right.
You know, those kind of seem like very obvious things, but they're still just kind of held out there. So those are the dynamics that exist.
And so if you have information on any of those cases, you'd have to look up what agency is holding that case. Which is, again, we're in a unique place, because if something was in Grays Harbor, it's usually Grays Harbor County Sheriffs. You know, most of them are under the county sheriffs or something like that. Whereas like here we have various jurisdictions. It's just something that just adds to that difficulty sometimes.
Yeah, so we also have on our website a war cry bookshelf. So we get asked different, what do you read? What do you listen to? And so we thought, well, there's 4 different dynamic people, so why don't we just reference a few of those? So I have some of them here that will be referencing. Some of my very raw notes that I don't usually make public are in there. So those will not be public, but those in the audience that would at least scroll through and see, I'll let you, but I realized when I just was pulling them from my bookshelf, I was like, oh, I should have pulled that comment out. Because sometimes I write Post-its in there and I'm like talking to the author, like, dude, why did you quote this? Or why did you say this way? So some of that is in there. I just want our live audience to know that. And if we ever want to do an episode, I'll consider it, but not right now. So first we have Mean Spirit by Linda Hogan. This is marked as something that is beautiful and elegiac story, a true American tragedy, a paradise lost. I loved it even while it broke my heart, was one of the reviews for this book. Searching for Savannah, the murder of one Native American woman and the violence against many by Mona Gable. We were able to interview her at in Seattle about this book, as well as a family member of Savannah. This one is a little bit more historical. Murder at the Mission by Blaine Harding. He is a journalist by nature. He doesn't typically write like historical info, so it's written a little bit different. And some of you might like that. This isn't like going to be a spoiler, but like when the first like 2 chapters of it, it was like Real Housewives of the Prairie on the Northwest. It's like, wow, what am I reading? How, so he writes in a very like conversational, interesting, dynamic way that gives those little anecdotes that you kind of usually will find in mainstream. So that's a little bit different than him. For those of you that might fall asleep during some history. And this talks about the frontier killing, its legacy and lies, and the taking of the American West, specifically Whitman. The difference in his writing also is that he actually, in writing about the history of the Whitman tragedy and the events that followed, he actually interviews members of the Cayuse. You don't often see that with people that write about historical events, that they're actually interviewing living members. So that's another reason that I wanted to mention. And this was a gift to me, and I got these other ones. So I will go ahead and pass these around so you can see them and all my raw notes. Don't quote me on any of those. Those are very anecdotal notes. And I wanted to turn to Robin or Nicole to add additional books or media that might be on there.
Yeah, so I'm more of a media person. I read the books that we had, like Searching for Savannah. And so one of the things that I think is interesting is we will get a lot of literature about Native stories written by non-natives. And so that's something that's not new, but I understand that I feel that as a Native person, when we read it, with our experience, we can differentiate perhaps what was their own conjecture, not necessarily what came from natives. And so when it comes to movies and books like Killers of the Flower Moon, while there was always like a contention on both sides of, well, it was written by a non-native and it portrays like a non-native protagonist and all these other things. It's true. But I do still just appreciate that story was out there, because then it sparks people's interest. Because if they're interested in something like that, then they'll see the next thing is like, oh, it wasn't written by a native, so here's the native portion, or here's the actual native thing. And again, like I said, a lot of the online like TikToks or short reels or things like that, I feel like we want to be able to have those ready for when people are ready to go to that next step and realize, hey, this story is beyond what this non-native writer wrote. So we will be able to have that educational part, just like when you're ready and when you know that like you're outside of that box of just reading non-native authors, this is the next step. This is the actual native version of that. And as time comes up, we also will see that with more releases of historical movies. I know that there's going to be one about the Comanche Nation pretty soon, about Quanah Parker. And of course, there's tons of books written about Quanah Parker and his mother, Cynthia Ann, written from the non-native perspective, but there are like Comanche versions of these same stories. And then that also brings me to a different issue as well. So we did have like Liz Hildebrand. She is a descendant, but she doesn't necessarily claim it. She doesn't want to take that space from Native people. So she, for her intended purposes, just kind of claims non-native, but her story with her son, I know she'll be publishing it, and that's something that we're definitely going to want to talk about later. And her perspective was kind of flipped as well, because it was the perpetrators were native. So that's something we also like to talk about on our show, is not just we have victims or missing people who were native or Yakima or enrolled descendant. We also have natives as the perpetrator. So that's something we have to be able to deal with, our duality of, obviously, as just a society of Native peoples, is that we both have victims and perpetrators. And so in Liz Hildebrand's case, her son was the victim and the Native people here were the perpetrators. But anyway, so back to that. Of course, Killers of the Flower Moon, obviously was an Oscar nominated movie. And it's a book. And then like what's going on, Searching for Savannah, that was written by a non-native. She was very cognizant of that. And she basically was saying she had the ability to go into these different realms that perhaps a native author wouldn't be able to access. And so that I kind of appreciated. She also got access to items that were from the non-native abductors, which I don't think a native person may have been able to get access to. Especially in that region, because that region seemed very like racist. You know, they had all of these preconceived notions of native people. So that is where I would be anyway. And we may even add that to our bookshelf where, well, this is written by a non-native, but you know, they were on our show. Are we able to talk to them? And we would still recommend this reading. The other is podcasts. So we love podcasts. I listen to podcasts a lot. I even listen to non-native, like true crime podcasts. And one that we had who was also a guest, her name is Connie Walker. And so she does the Stolen podcast, and I think this is her 4th season. And so she does do some in Canada. She does do some in the United States. It's Spotify, so it's like hosted by Spotify. So if you just go to Spotify, you can find it on there. But it's called Stolen, and it'll be on there, and I highly recommend it. You get sucked into it. She's such a great journalist. The other one is called Cooper Island. It is also a CBC production, and it's about residential schools. And so we do cover missing, murder, Indigenous people, but we also talk a lot about the residential and the boarding school experiences as well, because essentially they could be considered MMIP as well, because sometimes those, you don't know where they went. But those would be I have movies and TV. I do feel like there is a long ways for them to come and to go, but I still find it really interesting to watch. What is the one that's on HBO? True Detective. So the 4th season, I was like, what is it called? True Detective. I think the new season is about Native people.
Yeah.
And then of course there's Dark Winds.
Oh yeah, Dark Winds is a good one.
Yeah. What else was there? There's a new one with Lily Gladstone. I should have wrote that.
Yeah, that one's
Under
really
the Bridge.
yeah.
Okay, Under the Bridge. I think that's on Hulu. So that's, and of course Lily Gladstone was on Killers of the Flower Moon. But that's what I have. Let's go to Coley. I'm sure she's got more.
I currently listen to, I'm pulling up my Apple podcast. I've listened to Paper Ghosts.
Oh, yeah.
I listened to My Favorite Murder. And it's My Favorite Murder has been, gosh, I think they're like on their 15th season, 16th season, but they're 2 comedian females that cover true crime stories, and or they have one day where it's a short episode where people write in their own their own story. It could be anything now. It's a very broad. They talk about sinkholes, they talk about things they find in walls, they find things that behind pictures. Like it's a very random extra episode they throw in there, but they are comedians, and again, you have to remember that when you're listening to them, because what they talk about isn't funny. It's not funny, but to get through it, you have to be able to kind of like chuckle, you know. Natives, I feel like, are good at that. When it's something serious, we at least take 10 seconds to throw out a little chuckle, or, you know, to relieve that tension. And that's another thing too I try to remember, is when I'm watching 48 Hours, it's the same format. It's like they do the whole like backstory of the person, and then they go through and say all the obstacles they've been through, and you know, it's the same kind of format every episode. But you have to remember, or like I always try to remember, that a lot of these are played down a lot as to details, as talking about missing and murdered people. It's played down a lot for your entertainment. But again, it's not, you know, entertainment all the time, because it's a true story. It's factual, and it's very gritty when you get into deeper details. And I just try to remember that when I listen to podcasts and movies and stuff.
Ones.
I don't have any native ones
Okay.
other than ours. War cry.
Well, I mean, and I think that's where we want to open it up, right? We want to like.
Oh, Paul Holes does cover 3 native stories.
Oh,
Paul
okay.
Holes he was once a true crime investigator and then he became a journalist and now he's done TV, he's done a lot, but he has a podcast called Tenfold More Wicked, and him and another female investigator do a lot
Wow.
of they're short episodes, like 40 minutes, but he's done a lot more native approach, I feel like.
Yeah, so I mean, I think on this topic, it's so broad and there's a different media and books or resources to reference. And I think that that's helpful when you're in a situation or scenario where you have unanswered questions, when you have bits and pieces of information. And sometimes it's helpful to look and see what happened with another case. But yeah, the aspect that Nicole was talking about with the laughter with traumatic events. I mean, I asked my own like therapist, why do I laugh when I'm really stressed sometimes? Like, why is that? Or even just the circumstances we were talking about. And he said, laughter is a release of emotion. And so I kind of just grew to kind of accept that a little bit more. And when we talk, I think that's the power of being able to talk amongst Yakima women, is that we kind of already know that that cultural component is there and that we understand it. And sometimes we have to explain it to others. And sometimes we might identify with others that also utilize laughter as medicine. So yeah, so we wanted to kind of give you a little bit of updates about what we've been changing on the back end of our resources, additional information, as well as kind of narrating out like our insights and letting you see all of my notes in the book, which is like that's like my diary right there. You guys all just saw, yeah, you just saw like all of the raw feelings there and questions that I continue to have. But I want to shift us over to some news that just happened, in the past like 46 days, and we culminated yesterday at the Yakima Nation. So we have 10 months ago, the U.S. Justice Department chose Eastern Washington, where we're located, as the focus for solving missing and murdered Indigenous people cases. We're like, you know what? Yeah, out of all the nation, like this is one of the areas. And we're going to do a prosecutor and we're going to hire a coordinator. And there's going to be, I mean, just the announcement itself it felt like a wait and see. Like, all right, what are you going to give us? Like that was the initial response that a lot of people had. And so this was 10 months ago. So yesterday, the Yakima Nation, along with Department of Justice, swore in Bree Blackhorse, who's a member of Seminole Nation of Oklahoma. And she's lived in this Eastern Washington for some time now. And she was sworn in to be the prosecutor for the U.S. Justice Department. She's been there for over 40 days as of right now. So to have a response that actually has come to fruition within 9 months, like they didn't lie. I mean, that was my first response. Like they were serious. And, I wanted to reference an article by Orion Donovan Smith with the Spokesman Review, where he covered this announcement 10 months ago, just to give you some background and additional information on it. And we'll hyperlink that in. But, so why did the U.S. government choose this area? So this is from Vanessa Waldriff from the Department of Justice or the U.S. Attorney's Office. She's the top federal prosecutor in Eastern District of Washington. So she said, I really wanted Eastern Washington to be the leader in addressing the MMIP crisis. She added that her team advocated for the new assistant U.S. attorney to join them because of their history of prosecuting homicides and strong relationships with tribal law enforcement agencies on Yakima, Colville, Spokane, and Kalispell reservations. Now, they also said that in making the case to host a dedicated prosecutor in Eastern District, she said, we highlighted both our experience and also the severity of the problem of homicides that we're seeing in our district, the Yakama Nation and the Colville Reservation, and our desire to do more to address those issues here. The Department of Justice very rarely comments on cases publicly. Like, this is a validation that they're saying, oh, you have a problem. Like, this was major, like 9 or 10 months ago. It's like, oh, wow, they've acknowledged it, but are they really going to do what we're wanting them to do? Are they really going to move forward on this? And I don't know why the U.S. Attorney's Office or Department of Justice rarely makes public comments or interviews about cases, even when they're winning, even when they're doing good things, they rarely comment. So all the things you see on the crime dramas and all of those would be very short episodes because the attorneys never talk, even when they put the bad guys away. They're just like, I'm going to quietly sit here, put in my briefcase, go in my fancy heels or my, leather shoes and go get them shined and not talk to anybody about all this, justice that I brought to this community. I'm going to like go get in my car and drive off somewhere. So the fact that this happened 10 months ago, was major. And I was quoted in this article. And I give a range of comments, of course, but the ones that they chose to highlight was a little bit of my criticism and my distrust. And very specifically, I mentioned cases where I felt like even recent cases where the U.S. Attorney's Office prosecuted a Native woman that had been raped for killing her rapist. And I was like, you basically bypassed 3 of the federal acts that were just passed. You didn't even go along with their sentencing requirements. And now you're saying you're going to bring in a prosecutor to do more. Is that going to be to prosecute victims? Is that, so I made this point because I felt like it needed to be made. Even though in my heart, I'm optimistic about things. And then of course, I also brought up the fact that Yakima's first reported case of MMIW, which happened in 1855, has never been addressed by the federal government. Rather than prosecuting or going through things, they started a 3-year war. And so what was brought up as a response in this article 10 months ago by the U.S. Attorney's Office was, we recognize there's distrust and we're going to try to do better. And it was brought up yesterday at the swearing in about the distrust that is there. And sometimes, you just have to say what is amongst us and between us. Like, you just have to acknowledge it and the missteps in order for us to be able to do the work that needs to be done. So Bree Blackhorse is the first U.S. prosecutor dedicated to missing and murdered Indigenous people in the United States. And she's going to be, dedicated in Eastern Washington, which is here in our homelands. And one of the quotes that she said, and she was dressed in regalia, which was so powerful. And she was joined by her family. And so she said, the U.S. has failed to meet the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous people with the urgency and resources it demands. That historic failure stops now. Some bureaucratic people in the audience are very like, yes, yes. I was like, let's jump up and down. That's what we've been waiting for 165 plus years. Like, this is what we wanted. This is what we've been fighting for to hear, to have. But, I had to sit there in the audience and be, but now I can be like, so I'm going to turn it to Robin and Nicole. What is your reaction aside from,
It's I totally just did that. That's all. I was like, yeah, go Emily. No, but I personally do really care for, I do like Bree, and that she is a powerful attorney herself, and that I got to know her on a personal basis prior to her moving on into Olympia, I guess, and I couldn't have thought of anyone better, I guess. And that the fact that, you know, she isn't of this area, she still finds it to be it involves all of us, not just, you know, who's enrolled here and enrolled there. We're all one people, and I am so proud to have, you know, witnessed and seen that video. Like I was so happy because it does stop now. This is the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're right, it is very powerful that this came from a Native woman attorney speaking on behalf of what because we all live and work with a bunch of Native women. When they say they're gonna get that thing done, it gets done, you know? So it's like, okay, it's gonna get done. She's gonna take herself to make sure it gets done. And also she will be speaking at the symposium that behavioral health is gonna be doing. And that will be on the 7th, correct?
Yeah.
And I also want to acknowledge that I think without the work of even the Native people in Washington State, I know that there was like a lot of meetings with the attorneys generals and a lot of meetings with different administrations to really emphasize on various levels that, hey, here in Eastern Washington, this is bigger. You know, we were just talking about the numbers from Washington State Patrol. This is bigger here. Sometimes, you know, when we talk to detectives and people like Chris Cuestas, who's extremely knowledgeable, totally watch those shows with him. We could just listen to Chris Cuestas talk all the time about the different cases and his knowledge. But, you know, just talking about how it's almost like a perfect storm being here in Central Washington, being, you know, we're between Montana, Idaho, California, Oregon, and it's like we're just right literally in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
So we're in the middle of all of these impasses,
All the corridors.
kind of the awareness we need to have. And also, I mean, we're in the middle and we're central, but we're also like a plateau desert. So there's so many open spaces, there's so many opportunities. If people had anything nefarious that, you know, they could make it happen. So I want to say that I also want to acknowledge all those people who were involved in those meetings, who had spoken out, say, hey, here in Eastern Washington, it's a bigger issue. Because I did hear at one of these meetings, they were like, well, there's more people in Seattle, there's more people missing here. Yeah, but per capita here, there's more missing men and women who are Native. And at that time, it was equal men and women. I haven't looked at the genders yet, but the new numbers, but at that time, it's like, so it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you still have a high probability of being missing if you're a Native person. And then that was something that just backboarding a little bit. We had talked about even socioeconomically, it didn't really matter. You look at Killers of the Flower Moon, they were literally the richest Native tribe in the United States, and they were still being murdered and they went missing. And it doesn't matter if you're the poorest Native, you still are going murdered and missing. So it like doesn't, it surpasses any kind of socioeconomic background that you may have. It's just being a Native person and just representing the history of this nation that can make you a target, regardless of whatever their intent was. But anyway, so again, just acknowledging all of the hard work that the people in the state did. So of course, our co-host Patsy was one of those people who, so unfortunately she wasn't able to join us today. She had overlapping events, but she was probably one of the biggest voices that we had in the state, especially for Eastern Washington, especially for Yakama Nation people. So I just want to give thanks to all of them.
Yeah, I also want to share that I've known Bree on a personal level for 25 years. And then there's a board that I'm on called the Share Fund that did donate $100,000 to the group that she's a part of with Washington Women Lawyers that she leads the local chapter of to increase legal professionals. So I forgot to do that disclosure like Nicole, but I did want to just like, just so it's out there. I've known her for in personal and professional realms for 25 years. And we have talked about MMIW and been on panels together before in the past most recent years. That is an exciting news. I'm glad that Yakama Nation could coordinate with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and you saw the row of FBI in front. I was like, oh, it's the FBI. Nobody wants to sit next to them. They're the well, okay, just for the record, FBI. No, now that this is now flagged,
No
I was,
faces.
I was trying to take a picture. Yeah, there's not faces of the arrowhead and the speaker. And then I realized I got the FBI. And so, yeah, I did send it to them too. I was like, oh no, I already sent it to Robin. I better make sure to email it to them just so all my T's are crossed, I's are dotted. I'm not flagged and followed in accordance to any kind of law. But that's a very monumental decision, and I'm going to look forward to what this decision brings and means. I think that the next case that might be in her realm is US v. Andy, which should be May 13th, which is a Monday. That is a case of a stabbing that happened in Wapato at near Noah's Ark, I believe. And there wasn't a death in that one. It was an act of violence. So they survived. And so she'll be prosecuting that. But I think from the family members that we've heard from in the past, that there's been just basically so many delays. Like the act of not only investigating it, but then once the file is all complete from the investigator and detective side, it sits somewhere. And the prosecutor gets to decide if they are going to take that case or when they're going to take it or where it's elevated. And the issue that I have with US prosecutors, or questions I have about this process, is a number of them decide to take cases solely based on the points that they'll earn to be an eventual judge. So are they taking cases solely to bring justice to communities and answers to families? No, they are incentivized to bring those cases and to solve those cases, and they want a higher solve rate or a prosecution rate in order to get a better job. So what would happen if we incentivize that? Or what would happen is if we had a tribal member in the community that actually wanted those answers. So that's kind of the other side of this, that I keep holding. So, I mean, she's the first US prosecutor. I don't even think they have that many Native prosecutors. So I think they might think that we're super duper happy about this, which we are, but we still have those other questions. We still have that question about why those cases sit on people's desks, or why there's even cases out there that they don't even know it's in their jurisdiction anymore. It's basically kind of fallen through the cracks because the system doesn't incentivize solving Native cases. So if they really want to, why not give them the 3,000 points or whatever if they take on a Native case, even if they won't get it solved? What would that do to our system? What would that do to bringing answers? Anyway, that's my little soapbox about prosecutors. I've done a lot of research about that, but I do want to just, in our last kind of topic of the day is to just talk about, the importance of awareness and why we have this time of awareness and what's kind of coming up and what we should know about and pay attention to. So, for those of you that know about the different federal acts, Savannah's Act, Not Invisible Act, the Power Act, these all say these are the steps that have to happen in order for Natives to be better protected from violence. And then there's lots of language, right? Lots of tech. And you're what does all this mean? What does that mean? What does that mean to the average person? Okay, that's fancy language, legal language, but what does that mean? One of those requirements is that tribes can create plans in response to missing people. And that those law enforcements that are in the area need to listen to the tribes in their plan and follow it. That's by law, by federal act. They have to do that. There is one tribe out of 29 federally recognized tribes that has finished and finalized that plan. That's Tulalip. Yakima has been in draft phases of that, or planning phases and discussion since 2021. And there's a team of people working on it. Robin and I, we put on our volunteer hat. We didn't put on our War Crime podcast hat, but now we can say something. We're like, okay, we'll be volunteers and we'll be quiet and help you. To help on that plan. It has a very fancy name and an acronym, which I try to be aware of. It's called TCRP, the Tribal Community Response Plan. So this is what we are going to present on and share with the team. So not just us, on May 7th at 3 p.m. at Yakima Legends as a part of the MMIP symposium. So in terms of national awareness, I agree there's, additional next steps. As Heather explained, you can come and see the exhibit. You can come to this symposium. You can come to our talk. It's about awareness, and it's also about continued awareness about those next steps that are happening. Like if you know that a law enforcement agency has to follow a plan that the tribe says, like let's all let that be known. So that's what that kind of is my note about what we should be paying attention to. I'm going to turn it to Robin and Nicole.
Just for those who are tuning in live, I'm running this off of my phone battery and it might die in a minute. So if you are live and if at some point we get cut off, just know that we'll be posting this on, it's already on YouTube, so it's being recorded. So if you missed the last half, I apologize, but anyway, but yeah, so the TCRP is probably the biggest one. That's really all my mind has really been. I haven't really been all that much more. We have a bunch of things. Thank you all for coming. So, I'm excited to finally be able to talk about the TCRP. We had been meeting about this back in the Trump administration. So it's been that long. So it had been first discussed. So when I was talking about history, and we have Patsy helping bring these things forward, I just think it's kind of really interesting, the history of like Native issues and causes, and how sometimes it always comes from a most unexpected place. And so like when we talk about Patu, it's almost synonymous with Nixon. So
Yeah.
while he was
Yeah.
like not great for the rest of the nation, that came from his administration. And then of course, when we think about Trump, that was the last thing I ever thought that would come out of the Trump
Yeah.
administration. But seeing it further on and seeing where we're at now is really makes me hopeful. So please do come and listen to our presentation in TCRP. And they have some really cool photos on there. We also going to talk about like a little bit of the history of like where this came from and why it's important. So it's a tribal community response plan. And it's about, what do we do? So we have 33 missing cases. What is our role as a community people, and who do we turn to when someone goes missing? Because when that happens, you're in a panic, you don't know what to do, and we want to be able to rely on people, trustworthy agencies and people when that happens. But I don't know, you got anything?
No, I always just try to let people be open to expressing their thoughts and opinions on MMIW, MMIP, any kind of new developments, or even in the media, how it triggers people. I know I've had discussions with friends and neighbors or whoever, and I feel like just talking about it and keeping yourself safe and your family can help stop and prevent a lot of issues like this. So
Thank you. So we are at 1:11, which I mean is technically an hour from when we started, but I am aware of the
Yeah.
time. I did want to open it up for questions in the audience or on our.
And then you had a pre-assigned question, didn't you?
Oh, Heather had the pre-assigned question.
Oh,
Is
did
that
she?
the one you're talking about?
I was thinking of it from Elise.
Which one is
Did
it?
she have a question?
No.
Oh, okay.
Are you live streaming? That was
Oh,
Elise's
that
question.
was the question. Yes, we are live streaming.
Yes.
Do you have any questions or would you have any recommendations? So we talked about media. We want to be able to share that's relevant, I'd say, to the MMIW, MMIP or
Okay.
boarding schools.
Yeah.
Like residential boarding schools. So anyway, so yeah.
My name's Lauren from Yakima, and I've always wanted to find the space, the time, platform. My late father, Ken Berchi, received a phone call from his aunt Catherine, and one of the first things that she did was she was emotional. She said, "Find the God," and it was about priest abuse, and it was a priest that she was abused by over in Beaumont, Washington.
Oh my goodness.
And so from that phone call in 2008, my dad started going to Tamaki because he said, let's make this a case. This is the
Right.
first one you can do this at first. It's like, oh, you know?
Right.
And so from there, from 2008 to 2016, we had an impact. He spent a lot of time out in the field. You know, it was a lot of work. Not only an elder who never disclosed her experience, her painful account of what she went through. And my dad was one of the first people to hear. Just that emotional trauma that he, you know, underwent. And you feel like that's what kind of made his house really the best person. And I have to say, after 2014,
Right.
and yet trying to work in my dad, you're doing a lot. You're hearing a lot, you're listening a lot, but you know, there's so many variables. There's so much work that goes into it. But one is Indian people who are very reserved. You know, it's easy to lose contact. People go missing. And my father was able to go out there for legal, you know, you have to sign.
Right.
And if they don't have a phone number, they don't have an address,
Right.
their family doesn't know where they went, and they're part of this case, but we need you to sign this new document, you know, agree to these terms, stuff like
Right.
that. My dad would love it, right? Locate them. But it was just amazing to see all of his work and to know what he went through. And there's a lot to learn from it. I mean, not only have we dealt with Indian country and helping them come forward with their stories and
Mhm.
telling them, you know, that this form of justice, you know, is just the beginning. Ultimately,
Right.
you know, but he was like, this monetary, you know, this compensation is to help you, because a lot of them didn't want to because they felt shamed by it, like community-wise. Back then, the climate was way different.
Right.
And it was like, you're doing this for money, you know,
Mm.
other family members or community talk that say, you're just claiming that so you can get money. It was just, like I said, I don't really, I was locked and loaded, ready to go off. I would just like to be able to share that because all he wanted was more dialogue on it, these personal accounts. You know, we talk, in ceremonies, we give our testimony. I have heard many testimonies. You know, over 200 clients, native clients from Washington, through Montana. And so I have all the work that he did, and it even involves him trying to work with the FBI to investigate these boarding schools for things that he heard, like with the children, babies, you know, or being buried on the grounds there, stuff like that. He heard about that the school was trying to do that, as well as how tribal communities change their laws to protect children and you know, the statute of limitations. Like he really delved into it and tried so much and the ICLA and all of it. So he was heavily involved in all that. And I think through talking about that, a lot can be learned, a lot of questions can be brought up, like how to pay attention to your family. You know, we in our family, we have people that have been missing, my boyfriend's family recently, like in the last, I think, 3 years, their family member just ended up dead outside a walk to it. There's no answers for it. But, you know, we kind of, sadly, some families leave their family behind, if that makes sense. You know, they don't pay attention to where their friends, what cars do they get picked up in, you know, when did they say they would be back, or, you know, kind of paying attention to the pattern of others. And I just feel like there's a lot that can be learned from kind of documenting, you know, when you have family that are struggling, or maybe they might be, you know, unhoused, coming and going. I just feel like there's a lot, and just like to Emily's point about this big moment with Marie, what's her last name?
Black Horse.
Okay, with her, it's like there wasn't enough celebration, because I feel like maybe it was just a moment of like kind, you know, applause. But that is something big, and I feel like if people understood, you know, like with the Native American who was raped but got prosecuted, like, you know, if more of those stories were in the forefront, I feel like our community would have really hollered and hooted for that type of, like, this is what we have, and now it's here, you know, and now we'll have this for us, you know. But I'm sorry, and I appreciate you guys listening, but there's many things, you know. My sister got convicted for vehicular homicide, served a long sentence, you know, and it was so unjust, because, you know, you can have the native on native, no sentencing, you don't get the same, or but the fact that her, I don't know what to call it, but the deceased person was white. He was an elder white male, and so my sister served a long sentence for vehicular homicide. But I mean, like, there's just so many issues that where we always get the short end of the stick, and the media part, you know, like, our stories are getting picked up, our stories aren't being heard, whether it's that type of account for sentencing, or if it's the family members that have gone missing and there's no explanation to their death, or for the boarding school survivors to have a safe space, because yes, they presented it when that time came, and maybe they just want to put it behind themselves. But if there's someone still out there who needs healing, I feel that if they hear more accounts, they might be able to resolve and uncover those wounds. So I just really wanted to get that out, and I appreciate your eyes and your ears, and I just really want to thank you guys for having this, and for your insight and your commitment to knowledge and to awareness, and I think it's really, really excellent. And yeah, I just want to thank you guys.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the range of topics that you bring, and I just want to thank you for sharing something that you carry around. The generational trauma that comes with that. And, you know, I think I would have cried after the first sentence if that was something that I was sharing about my own family member. So that takes a lot of strength, and to share your family's story and to carry that. And I appreciate you sharing that with us today.
I definitely identify with your need to want to see a reconciliation or some kind of justice. And you're right, it's not moving as fast as it should, and it's not going, we're definitely not where we should be. But I think you're right, with more stories out there, then we can build more of an awareness. So thank you for sharing your story.
And I thank you for, you know, keeping what your dad's mission was alive. Because it's, I know how you feel about your dad, it's probably how I feel about mine. So, thank you for sharing that, and I appreciate you coming today.
Any other questions? I don't know if we checked our live at all. Sorry, anybody that's on live, we'll have to get back to you. Yes.
It's sort of a comment. I'm gonna say things as simple as possible because it usually helps me to know where to start. I'm really glad that we are at a point where we're all at a starting point with, Miss Brady and, I truly miss, Patsy not being at the table. I have such respect and love for her. I know she's busy. But looking at this, I really love how that we are starting to go forth and forth, meaning looking at it in a process that we are going to, number one, acknowledge what's happening. A lot of us as Native people live our lives in such a way to where we're free. But when that becomes an issue of us learning to recognize the evil in which is amongst us, what's happened to our people is truly evil. And I just speak, and I speak as I'm the oldest of my sisters. We also, within the last year, have faced with our family a murder or a killing. We don't have any answers to that person's death. But it's not that we don't know what to do, but hopefully with the protocols that can help us know what our next steps are. As the Indian people, we're always trying to find ways to heal. But yet we don't need to be number one and being missing Indigenous people.
Right.
We don't need to be one being incarcerated, number one race being incarcerated, or being into those things that are truly evil. I can't wait to see what the horizon has to offer and being able to know that this new way we're going to move towards is definitely going to be community processes in which we can start. That's the power. That's the power I think we're going to have. And the grief, I think learning to grieve in any way possible and being able to just go forth and be accepting to the grief is definitely important. I'm still very, very angry at my person who has been killed. And I no answers to his death. Regardless if he was homeless, houseless person or not, we still love that person and who they are. We love our people at their worst, regardless. So I am so thankful for this podcast because it kind of gives me a way of like, instead of sitting and feeling hopeless, which people are used to, we are actually more cry becomes a voice of hope, where we can start moving towards something to find that healing, and then to move from that healing, have a very clear mind. This is what we need to do to help solve these things. And then as we all are having that awakening, we see we're not alone in this. 33 other families. There's other people who are looking for this healing, besides finding ways to love that person that should not have their life taken or killed. So I just have to say that it's more just a comment. It's one of the issues I think is very important. It's not ever been out there with our people. But I come very genuine, and I come with the thought of like, I'm going to do my best to make sure that we can avoid that. I know a lot of our people are incarcerated, but I know they're okay. I'm sorry to say that, but I know you're okay, and I know where you are. Those who are not incarcerated. When I looked for my loved one that was missing, maybe time to be missing for 6 months, and I felt secure. Oh, he's in the Dells. He's in the Dells for the winter. He's okay. Dallas meaning in the jail. So just trying to keep track of those kind of things, but yet as people who keep kind of our intuition out there, I think that war cry is that in my mind. War cry is a cry that is also given hope. So I'm very thankful to you guys, and whatever you guys need from me as a support, whatever, I plan to help war cry anyway. Because it's gonna help, not just me, it's gonna help other people fight against it and find it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question or comment.
Did you raise your hand? Oh, okay. I was like, oh, she's raising her hand. Okay.
RP, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we're sorry about the unanswered questions and waiting for justice for your family members. It's heavy. It's heavy, and difficult, and we hope to be in community with you, and we hope that, you can reach out to us anytime, and that doesn't always necessarily mean you have to be on, like we can keep it as just a conversation on the side as well.
Yeah.
So let's give a couple of war cries or a few war cries, to the, U.S. Attorney's Office of Eastern District for having a 9-month turnaround time. Yeah. And Bree Blackhorse is being the first U.S. prosecutor dedicated to MMIP issues, as well as the family members of MMIW&P that are in the audience with us today, as well as the case that was brought up with regards to the Ken Bear Chief and Tamaki Law, for the priest abuse. We also thank, of course, our host today, Yakama Nation Museum. We are an Indigenous-led podcast surviving under the duress of colonization and intergenerational trauma towards self-determination. If you do at any point need culturally appropriate advocacy, there's Strong Hearts Native Helpline at 1-844-7-NATIVE. Again, that's 1-844-762-8483, or you can chat online at strongheartshelpline.org. I'm Emily Washings, and thank you again to co-host Robin Pibashi and Nicole Pibashi. This is edited and produced in our IT genius, Robin Pibashi of Pibashi Studios. We'll have music by Lisa Kapoptiwa. Our logo and shirts by John Onley Schellenberger with Native Anthro, which you can buy our shirts. It helps support our show. He said we don't ever say to buy the shirts so that they're available. So we are now saying it. Buy our shirts. I think we sold not enough, but we sold we haven't sold any in the past 2 months, and we were wondering why. And he said, maybe you should tell people they can buy them. You haven't said it once. So we were saying it. And then, of course, if you're not able to buy the shirt, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. Of course, reach out if you need to. Thank you very much.
Hey.
It's all right.
And done. With battery to spare. Yay. Battery. 1%. 1%.
What was for lunch anyway, Tyrone? Oh, all healthy. At like, it never fails at like 8 p.m. I've already eaten. I've already decided what's my dessert if I haven't eaten it. And then here comes Tyrone with his huckleberry smoothie. I'm like, now I want a huckleberry smoothie. And it's like, you can tell he uses a lot of huckleberries. It's a purple.
Not even white.
Yeah, it's not even like the white with the chunks. Yeah, it's like super mixed in. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we were.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. I was just looking through it, I go. Yeah, see, I didn't, those are, I didn't change those.
No, I didn't.